Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our tour through every Penguin classic, past, present, and yet to come. And our book today is a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. The normal Black Spine Penguin Classics are ordinary books. They're really good, but they're ordinary books. They are meant for wide-scale distribution in schools and stores. And the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions are different than that. They do still show up in schools, and of course they show up in stores because they're lovely. They're made with extra care. They're usually bigger. So, not all of them, but usually they're very big editions. They have deckled edges and French flaps and whatnot. And we are dealing with one of them today. But I am not going to hold up the book to you, the print and paper book, for a simple reason. One of you years ago was kind enough to send me a copy of this book. And I thought, oh, well, that's great. I know just the part of this book that I want to reread. I will settle down with it. And I got everything ready, and I sat back on the pillows, on the bed, on the in the little book room. And I lifted up the book, and the front cover just very neatly, very politely tore off from the great weight of the rest of the book. Because when you're dealing with a print and paper book, that's the sort of thing you have to worry about. The weight and ungainliness of the physical product is going to destroy the product itself. And that's what happened to this book, The Short Novels of John Steinbeck. This is the Penguin Classic Deluxe cover, and I don't have a print copy of the book because I'm worried that in my eagerness to get at the book, I will forget that I have to handle it so gently. I have an e-copy of the book instead. But whether I have an e-copy or not, this is still fascinating to talk about for a number of different reasons. This, first of all, the title is a little bit misleading. These are not all the short novels of John Steinbeck. He wrote others. This volume, if you want to go at it chronologically, it starts off with The Red Pony, which he wrote in serialized form starting in 1933. There were a couple of books before then that I would argue are not very easily demonstrably worse than The Red Pony. I think I would love to have been present at the editorial meeting that decided what was going in here and what wasn't. Of course, when you're dealing with the short novels of John Steinbeck, Of Mice and Men is going to be in here. But what about the others? Who decided? How was it decided that the others would be in here? But I wasn't at that meeting. I'm never at that meeting. Or there'd be a lot more trollop in Penguin Classics. But this, chronologically, it starts off with The Red Pony. Then we move on to Tortilla Flat, which came out in 1935. So roughly the same creative period. Then the next book on the roster would be Of Mice and Men, which is the most famous book in here. It's in a little mass market paperback. It was taught in schools in the United States forever. For all I know, it still is. For a great combination of killer reasons. One is that Steinbeck is not a trivial author. He is considered a major American author, the author of a great American novel of the 20th century, The Grapes of Wrath. And we'll get to that. So that's one reason why a teacher would find him attractive. And the other attractive reason is that Of Mice and Men is 80 pages long, soaking wet, with rocks in its pockets. So if you're a teacher, you always want to teach really good things to your students. But you also want your students to read. And I'm using a euphemism here. What I mean is you want your male students to read. You want them to actually do the reading. So if you can find a really great book by a great author that's also really short, you will teach it. You will teach that book. You will lean towards The Great Gatsby. You will lean towards Old Man and the Sea. You will lean towards Of Mice and Men. I think that's unfortunate myself. When you're getting impressionable young people, especially impressionable young men at high school, you want to teach them not only the truth that we all know, which is that books are a great adventure. As one teacher of mine said, the greatest adventure of them all. You want to make sure that they know that. Not just that they're hearing that as PR. You want them to make sure that they know that. But you also want to teach them how to do it. And that includes beefing up the muscles that you need to read at attention for longer periods of time. If you're feeding them short books, you're, I think, counteracting that. But Of Mice and Men came out in 1937. So we're talking... The Red Pony serialization ended in 36, so 36, 35, 37, roughly the same period. Then we jump forward for The Moon is Down, my favorite of the books in this big Penguin anthology. The Moon is Down has, I think, much more texture than anything that Steinbeck had written before then. And it came out in 1942. And maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's important to understand that you're looking at a later work. This volume covers more than 15 years of Steinbeck's creative life. That's fascinating in its own. But then from The Moon is Down, we move on to Cannery Row, which is probably one of my least favorite Steinbeck, certainly shorter works. It's one of my least favorite of the shorter works, mainly because it's weirdly condescending, I think, from an author who almost never condescends, who actually was upset by condescension, and rightfully so. It had been doled out to him on a number of different occasions. And you can have your differences with Steinbeck as an artist or as a creator. I certainly do, and I've had more of them in the past. But he was a serious person. It is laughable to be condescending to him just because of his affect or whatnot, and because he got honored by the wrong president. But anyway, from Cannery Row in 1945, we move on to The Pearl in 1947. So a good solid decade after The Red Pony. And Steinbeck died in 1968. So, 1950, 1968, you could easily say one of two things. Either that he was no longer capable of really ice-pick sharp, shorter works for that last part of his life, or that he was no longer capable of first-rate work just in general at any length for the rest of his life. I think it's probably the former. And that gets us to an important point, I think. I don't know if you'll agree. Probably a lot of you won't. A lot of you would join Micah Cummins in agreeing that The Grapes of Wrath is a great 20th century American novel. I've heard people say that it is the great 20th century American novel. I don't know about that. A video on great 20th century American novels would be a lot of fun. But I have perhaps a heretical opinion about John Steinbeck. I have always thought that this is Steinbeck at his best. I would have changed this table of contents. I would take out a couple of these books and put in a couple of different ones, short ones. They'd still be doable in this volume, but it doesn't matter really. The question is one of style, not preference. And I myself think that Steinbeck is better at shorter works, which is going to put me at odds with the people who love The Grapes of Wrath and even who love East of Eden. It's going to put me at odds with them, and it's a little bit at odds with my own personal predilection for his King Arthur book, which is longer. His King Arthur book is as long as three of these put together, any three of these. And I really like it, but it is definitely an indulgence on Steinbeck's part, a weird oddity. So I don't know that it even counts in a discussion of his work. I don't know that it does. It reads like the kind of thing that would be found in an author's desk after he dies of lung cancer instead of before. But whether you agree with whether you agree with that or not, I think that is true. I think that Steinbeck was a subtractor when it came to his own writing. I think he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and then mercilessly subtracted, just pulled things out everywhere. I think he had to work against that with his longer works. And I never think it's all that healthy for an author to work against his own muse. So I would argue that, it'd be nice if I had a print copy of this, but I'd be too worried that I would destroy it. But I would argue that this is actually Steinbeck at his best. Maybe not these exact 6 books, but his shorter works, fiction and nonfiction. I don't know. Maybe that's not a minority opinion anymore, but this is still a fascinating volume. Because whether or not you venerate The Grapes of Wrath, and I could see plenty of reasons why you would, but whether or not you venerate it, here you're getting something that most Penguin Classic Deluxe editions do not give you, which is almost 20 years of creativity in the life of an author. I think it's fascinating if you read this. I have read this volume only once. I didn't get a chance to read it the second time when it was sent to me. Because, of course, once you rip the cover on a paperback book, you get rid of that book or lightning is going to strike your house. So I didn't try to repair it or anything. But the first time that I read this, it came to the bookstore where I was working. I was the one who unpacked the box. I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? God, Penguin does such interesting things. And I decided, this was before there was a booktube, that I would read this from cover to cover. But I wouldn't jump in. I originally intended to jump in with The Red Pony. But I decided I would read it from cover to cover. And I did. Just page 1 all the way to the end. Somehow or other, that original copy fared much better than the second copy I was sent. I guess if you see this at a library book sale and you already have a copy, if you see a second copy, feel free to send it along to Hyde Cottage. I'll give it another try in paper form. I might even grab it myself if I see it at my bookshop. But reading it from cover to cover was fascinating. I was expecting what I did not get. I was expecting to see an author developing, and you don't see that. You don't see that. Remarkably little of it. The Steinbeck who came fully formed out of his womb 2 books before The Red Pony is very much tonally, ideologically, very much rhetorically speaking, in terms of the full breadth of his power when he orchestrates a really good scene, which this author is bad at doing. But when he does it, he does it well. All of those things are no different from the crowning works of his greatest creative period, I think. Virtually no different. So reading this from front to back was weird. It was a weird experience. But that's your Penguin for today, a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition that we are looking at on the screen. In this case, because I was going to say I destroyed, but the book destroyed itself. Because print and paper books are for losers. But he says, behind a background of hundreds and hundreds of print and paper books. But I'm showing you that not only because I destroyed my original paperback and I'm superstitious about getting another one, but also because there are going to be plenty of Penguins that we're going to do in this Daily Penguin that I don't have a print copy of. Plenty of them that I've read, that I have plenty of thoughts about, but that I don't have a print and paper copy of. So I just wanted to lay the groundwork for that. So I'll wrap this up for now, and we'll be back next time for something else. Thank you, BookTube.